Today we have Mike Grogan for the expert interview. He is an author, he is an inspirational speaker, and he's a management consultant. He's an Irish guy living here in the Philippines for a number of years now, and he can help you build and optimize your Filipino team.
So my background is actually chemical engineering. So I got my degree there and went on the path of traditional engineering. And I worked for a big pharmaceutical company for 8 years, and it was halfway through that tenure that I volunteered to do some internal teaching in the company. So I guess I accidentally found my passion in teaching, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I got addicted to something called Lean Six Sigma, the continuous improvement philosophy, Kaizen, and I really saw that being applicable not just to business but outside of business in my personal life. So I joined the internal training team full-time, and for 4 years I was one of the teachers internally in a corporate training environment in North America, and I loved it. And from there I did something crazy. I quit my job in America, moved to Africa for 2 years, and I worked in a hospital as the lean management coach for that hospital. So I worked with the managers on realizing the principles of continuous improvement. So I guess what that taught me is that continuous improvement can work anywhere, in any organization, regardless of the work they do or the environment that they're in. And I guess that qualified, well, I don't know if qualified is the right word, but it really set me up for success here in the Philippines, my international experience in other countries, because I really see so much potential here in the Philippines for continuous improvement philosophies and people development. I have found myself as a motivational speaker and an inspirational speaker here in the Philippines. It wasn't the initial intention, but I started to volunteer in some schools initially, and in terms of sharing the message of what the strengths I see in the Filipino, and it really has exploded since. Since then I've spoken live to over 100,000 Filipinos. Our online videos are of over 17 million views. It's just phenomenal reaction. I've written 3 books total. My first 2 books are about the Philippines, and it was observations from an outsider of what the strengths and potential of this country is, and that message has been really, really well received by the Filipino people. So that's something that humbles me every single day when we literally do get sometimes over 100 messages every day from Filipinos around the world that really have been touched by our work, whether it be that on our videos or our books or our talks. It really has resonated with the Filipino, and that's something that gives me a lot of joy, that we're really helping Filipinos break free from false beliefs that are holding them back. I work with a lot of BPOs in the Philippines, and I guess my objective is to help these foreign owners to get the most out of their investment in the Philippines. You must help the Filipinos change how they think in order to get the best out of your investments. There's a lot of strengths with this culture, but there needs to be that, idea sex between certain Western values and the strengths of the Filipino. So essentially owners ask me to come in, and not just in terms of motivational talks, but in terms of true behavioral change training to help make their workers essentially more productive, more proactive, and more confident. There's a lot of strengths of the Filipino, but in terms of some of the challenges or opportunities, it's certainly thinking proactively and thinking like as a decision maker. So that's what I see as the biggest needs a foreign investor will have in its people here, to get them thinking like a decision maker, especially their managers. And that can't be done without some people development and intervention, and that's the niche that I found myself here in the Philippines, both in terms of our talks and our behavioral change training to transform Filipinos' way of thinking. The 3 obvious ones would be, of course, English speaking, of course their technical skills, and their in Filipino, because I can speak some Filipino, the masayahan spirit, so the joyful spirit of the Filipino. So they're not so much secrets. So I want to give more some of the observations I've seen. And it's definitely the power of Filipinos when they work in teams. unlike the Western, how do you say, traditional Western mentality of the focus on the individual, there really is here in Asia, as I'm sure many of our listeners would have, will understand, more of a collaboration spirit. So there is so much more teamwork when Filipino teams are put together, and there's so much sharing, there's so much helping each other out. That's just, for me, when I see that level within my own team and in other teams, it's just, wow, Filipino teams can achieve amazing things when they really work together for the common purpose. So that would be the number one best secret in terms of the power of team here in the Philippines. And number two is how important humor is to the Philippine workforce. That if you extract humor from the everyday Filipino day-to-day work, it's it's quite, for me initially, and this is, forgive my ignorance when I initially saw, it seems a bit childish sometimes, and that was my initial, when I saw grown men and women behave in certain ways. But I realized that's something really Westerners can learn from the Filipino, this mindset of playfulness and joyfulness. Some Westerners make the mistake, like I did, to label it childlike, but there is something in that joy in work, and I think that one of the greatest observations is the resilience of the Filipino in terms of how they can respond to adversity. So there's a lot there in that resilience ability and joyful ability that Westerners can learn a lot from. And the number three secret is, it's a Filipino word, walang iwanan, which means leave no one behind. Filipinos really, the bonds they form between work colleagues, and I can use my own personal example. I've worked in many different companies and many different teams, and many of those relationships have ended once you leave the company. But here in the Philippines, the relationships is so important. And that's something I think Westerners sometimes, including myself, we misunderstand the importance of relationships in the Filipino work context and how emotional they can get when someone leaves, etc. So that's another very important dynamic. That, for example, the Filipino worker is not just motivated by money. They want to be rewarded and acknowledged and recognized and be felt valued. And that can take some lessons for a foreigner to understand that. So they can, it's part of the learning process. It was part of my learning process in order to get to the point where, okay, this is how I can leverage this amazing, talented work pool for high performance. So it's one of the lessons, valuable lessons I have learned. Here in the Philippines, the number one barrier, absolutely top number one barrier to a high performing employee or a high performing team is what I'm calling false beliefs of your Filipino workforce. This is a beautiful country. However, it has got a history of being colonized by Spanish, Americans, Japanese. That legacy of colonialization still exists today. And this it kind of breaks my heart when I see this, not just in the workforce, but obviously in the Filipino youth in schools, where I get to do a lot of talks. A lot of your workers will be holding on to false beliefs that they're not good enough, not smart enough, and that you as the owner or the foreigner, that you're better than them. Now, the huge disadvantage of that is they will not speak up. They will not argue with you. They will be in a compliance culture, which can have disastrous consequences for your business, because you want, especially your managers, to be proactive, to be confident, to challenge the status quo. So for me, one of the most effective hacks I've seen in the initial stages of a team is to talk about false beliefs. And because a lot of these Filipinos, they've been given these false beliefs from an early age, maybe their parents, maybe their work colleagues, and they've been holding on to these beliefs that they're not good enough or smart enough. So focusing your initial training efforts, because when I do our training sessions, I know that I can't achieve any progress until we talk about what are the false beliefs holding you back. So it's spending time uncovering that could be one of the great aha moments you get in the initial stages of developing your team here. So this is something I see, a challenge I've seen not just in this country but in other countries, but especially here in the Philippines, and it's a very fair observation that there is the follower mentality and not enough leaders. And this may seem strange coming from a labeled motivational speaker or inspirational speaker, because I have done a lot of talks here in the Philippines, but motivation alone is not enough. Inspiration alone is not enough. And I've seen this in the Philippines, and I see this in every country that I've been to, but especially here in the Philippines, we need habits. We need the daily habits of leadership. It's not just a one-off workshop. It's not just a motivational talk from some outsider like me. There is a process to habits. So that's why I spent last 7 months writing my third book, Unlocking the Habit Code, which I really wanted to give people a manual, if you will, an ABC of how to install those success habits, both to yourself and into your management team. So I really believe that the key to unlocking this follower mentality is installing these habits in terms of these proactive habits of reflection, proactive questions of challenge, reflecting on problems, those proactive problem-solving questions that once initially practiced and following the habit methodology, they become part of the DNA. And it's through that process, there's no, I guess a key takeaway I want to share is there's no one-off event that's going to suddenly transform your Filipino worker into this ideal leader that you would expect in your own countries in terms of being proactive and productive. It is a journey, and the most effective method that I've seen is through habit programs. So leadership programs combined with programs on how to make those new behaviors habits. One of the examples that I'm most proud of when I did work with a company just outside Metro Manila, and within a 2.5 month window, their performance of one of the key KPIs for that department, it went from an efficiency level of 64% to greater than 95% in just 2.5 months. And what delights me about that is none of the solutions came from me. Yes, outsiders could have come in and started to tell the Filipino workers what to do, but what I did, my role was really the facilitator of a problem-solving team. When we had about 12 Filipinos on the team from different departments, this is a big company here, and just if you create the environment and ask the right questions, and my role was the facilitator, not the preacher here, Filipinos will get to those solutions themselves. So I really believe in acting your way into a new type of thinking. So it's through that problem-solving workshops that these Filipinos were able to think creatively and to come up with their own solutions to the problems. So that gave me a lot of satisfaction to see not only was the business significant, now this was a massive win for the company to go from 64% to over 95% in such a short time, but I believe the greatest win is not in that measure, but in the behavioral change that happened to their people. And that's the greatest win for the business long term in terms of those employees now developing the habits of continuous improvement. My call to action typically there is, just to give you a sample, was to come here. I always, so that for me is the most obvious. I get messages so many times when I was in Africa and even now in the Philippines from outsiders, and my obvious call to action, yeah, we could talk all we want over Skype, but there's no comparison to coming here for a holiday or for an exploration business visit and to see for yourself. They can give you extraordinary loyalty. These workers, they could be with your company for a long, you'll have loyalty levels incomparable to what you would have in your own home countries. And I guess the part of that is invest. The majority of the Filipino workforce are looking for stability and somewhere where they can feel valued. And if you can they're so hungry to grow. That's what I noticed from so many of the foreigners that I have workforce here. The Philippines, so many, under the right conditions, the majority are really hungry to learn and grow. Two of my biggest takeaways that I'll give to any potential investor out there, wherever they may be, about coming to the Philippines is invest in your people. Really, truly invest in the people. This is not the, maybe those horror stories you've heard about cheap sweatshop labor. The Philippines is different to that. These workers want community. They want to be felt appreciated. They want to learn from you. And if you invest in them, you will get something that's just incomparable to back in your home country. The loyalty levels from Filipinos, they want community. They want to go somewhere where they're appreciated and valued. And they will give you loyalty for decades. And that's something that, be in it for the long term. That's really my big advice, and to help be a mentor and friend to them, because it's different to doing business. I think that's the biggest plus for me, is the business relationships are more highly valued here. And it's quite joyful, actually. It gives you a lot of joy. And the second advice I will give is come to the Philippines. And this is coming from someone, I do get a lot of emails from foreigners. When I lived in Africa, I got these messages. And when I lived here in the Philippines, I still get these messages of people who are interested in coming here, whether it be vacation, whether it be to invest. And there is no comparison than to come here for yourself and find out. Come here for a week, for a few days, have the best vacation of your lifetime, and at the same time, get exposed to the potential here. It'll just totally change your perspective. And yeah, if any way I can help, I'm more than happy to do so. So this is Mabuhay ang Pilipinas. I think the greatest value that I do offer companies here in the Philippines, the investors that come to the Philippines, is really changing the way Filipinos think. And that's not an overnight thing. I have found that inspirational messages, even though I'm an inspirational speaker and I've spoken to over 100,000 Filipinos, and our videos online have reached millions and millions of views, I believe it's a process to transforming the way your employees think. It will need patience from the owners, it need patience from the managers, but the investment, the return on investment is so worthwhile. And I absolutely love working with Filipinos. For their strengths, they make me a better man living in this country, and to help them change the way they think, free themselves from false beliefs, become more confident, become more proactive, become more productive, ultimately become more productive, become greater leaders, gives me so much joy. So I have a huge, when I get asked on a daily basis, why am I here? And my honest answer is, this country makes me a better man. I love working with Filipinos, and I love seeing them reach their potential. So just like what you guys are doing, accelerating investors' journey in the Philippines, I feel that that's my role here in the Philippines, to accelerate Filipino staff, particularly the managers, to accelerate their role to reach their potential as a leader, to reach their potential as a manager. And that gives me so much joy. In the Philippines, I've written 3 books. I'll just show you the 3 books. The first one, The Rise of the Pinoy, focusing on 21 successful Filipinos. The second one, which is now translated into, will be translated shortly into 3 languages: English, Tagalog, which is the #1 language here, and the second is Cebuano. So this is 7 reasons why the Filipino can change the world. My first 2 books is really focused on getting the Filipinos to believe in themselves. And that's what I see is one of the biggest challenges here, that a lot of Filipinos don't believe in themselves and their potential. And the third book I wrote, which took the most time, was it's really a business book and self-improvement book about how to unlock the habit code, how to make change easy. Because I don't subscribe to the false belief that a lot of people have that change is difficult, whether that be personal change with your health or change in terms of improving the productivity of your staff. There is a hack to make that process a lot less difficult, and I really believe that's in habit creation, and that comes from my background of lean, continuous improvement, Kaizen. So folks who want to get in touch with me, just go to my website, mikegrogan.ph. I'm going to be in the Philippines for a very long time. I have no plans in leaving. My mother maybe thinks I'm crazy that I'm not back in Ireland and following the normal path, but I absolutely love it here, and I'd really encourage any investor out there that the Philippines, I believe with all my heart, is the new land of opportunity. It's we have looked towards America and Europe for a very long time. Here we will see transformational growth in the next decade, and I'm not leaving. I want to be a part of it, and bringing you and your business here in the Philippines, you can be part of something special, and not only take part in helping this nation transform to become a first world country, but also significant benefits to your business, because you'll be partnering with, in my opinion, the greatest workforce in the world, the Filipino workforce. So please come to the Philippines. You will not regret it. This will be the best business decision you'll have ever made in your life.